Thomas, class of 15, is the first professional sprinter for New Balance and is training in Austin, Texas for Team USA and aiming at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. She's an NCAA champion, a 200M meter collegiate record holder, and she is also doing her master's in public health at the University of Texas in Austin, I believe. Yeah. And then Sidney Baptista, class of '05, hosts the Fitness in Color podcast. He's the founder of Pioneers, is how I'm going to say it, PYNRS, which is a global apparel brand celebrating community culture and diversity through fitness and performance streetwear. He is also leading a running movement, which brings community empowerment to his Boston neighborhood with Pioneers Run Crew. So I'm going to turn it over to Gabby and Sidney, who are going to talk a little bit about their journey from Williston to where they are now, share some of their top tips, and then we'll open the floor to questions and conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So excited to be here, to see so many faces, so many friends. Thank you for being here. Gabby, super excited to be here with you. I'm sitting there, I'm sharing the screen with a legend already.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here too. Thank you guys for coming. It's really cool to see everyone here. Like, I recognize a lot of my old teachers and coaches, and it feels just very weird for me just because I feel like I really did just graduate from Williston. So it's just so interesting to be a real alumni right now, and we missed our reunion because of COVID. So I'm just like, this is my first alumni event, and I'm just really excited to share with you guys and find that common ground, since we've all, have such a special relationship with Williston. So I'm excited for tonight. Sidney, you can share intro first.
Sure. I still feel like I'm connected to Williston. I talk to these guys, my buddies, they're on here. Class of '05, almost every day, multiple times a day, too much sometimes. And so like I'm always connected to this community. It's always like they're the first people I go to when anything happens. So it's really cool. But yeah, so Sidney Baptista, '05, class of '05, had a couple of records. We were talking about it before we got on here. I don't know if they recorded them correctly, but at one point was one of the fastest men in Williston history. Didn't run after Williston. So had a really, really awesome Williston career. Really started running track my junior year. And so then broke a lot of records my senior year. And so I didn't have this history in track that I was going to be recruited for. And so I went to UMass Amherst, and I walked on for half a year, and then kind of I was at UMass Amherst. Nice, great school to enjoy myself. And so didn't do any running there, just stayed active in sports. And then I didn't pick up running until 2014, when I was just had quit my job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and was chasing the entrepreneurial life. And I found myself not as fast as I used to be, because I had torn both my knees up between high school and this time, had 2 knee surgeries. So I wasn't moving as quick on the basketball court or on the soccer field. And so I found myself in running distance and trying to be competitive there. Seeing a bunch of older people running faster than me, and I couldn't take that. So I had to train to be faster, and I ran my first marathon within a year. And what I found was that running was really helping me get through this tough period in my life. I went 4 years at Williston, 4 years at UMass, 6 years at PwC, and then it was like, now what? And so there was no constant anymore. And then so running kind of took that on for me. And it was so great for my mental health that 2 years later, like I had fallen so much into it that 2 years later I became a running coach. And as I became a running coach and was trying to bring more people into running and trying to explain and show how running had changed my life and had really been a benefit to me, it was really hard to find people of color that were in my running scene. So I would have to so I grew up in Dorchester, I'm back here. I would have to leave my neighborhood to go coach in Cambridge, go run on the Charles, and go running outside of my neighborhood. And so in 2017, I decided to bring running to my neighborhood and create a running team that has now grown and become nationally recognized, been in Runner's World a couple of times, and has just really made a difference to the community that I live in, and really just, you know, being able to run in your neighborhood and being able to step out of your door and go for a run is a privilege that we don't really think about until it's not available to you. And so I've thrown myself full time into running now. I started running apparel line because there's a market there that's missing, and we launched and it's doing really well. And so I'm excited about that. And to be, running is so important to me, and it could help people who are also going through mental health issues or stress in their life. And we know that people of color in this country are on the lower end of income and wealth, the wealth disparity and how much money they have and how many underlying health issues they have. And so I see running as a great equalizer. And also it could help with the stress levels and help maintain that fitness level and that just physical health level for folks in my community. And so that's why I do it. And we've been growing it. And so I'm excited to be here and tell you more about how you can run more and how you can just incorporate it into your life. And yeah. And I have a video, so I'm gonna go mute.
Sebastian is so cute. Yes to all of that. I love so much of what you said, Sydney. You make a really great point, and something that I'd love to touch on later tonight is just this idea of the different demographics, especially that makes up even the track and field world that I'm a part of now. There's a serious segregation pattern in different track disciplines, which we can get into later. But when you look at the sprinters versus even the people who get into the more distant running, it's a real pattern that you see. And also just the point on running is self-care. I love to talk about that. Running is a huge part of self-care. And I think that introducing it to communities of color is so important. But to introduce myself really quickly, Gabby Thomas, class of 2015. Similar to Sydney, I didn't go into running too seriously at first. I mean, I started in middle school. So I joined Williston as a 7th grader. So when I actually moved, so I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. When I moved to Massachusetts, my mom took a job at UMass Amherst, and we went right into Williston. So Williston kind of became literally my home. So when we moved to Western Massachusetts, I was, having breakfast at Williston, lunch at Williston, dinner at Williston, and just spending so much time there. I had a working mom, so she would drop us off early in the morning, come get us later in the evening. So I'd be there pretty much all day through, school, to sports, to dinner, do some homework at the library, and then, go home and do it all over again. And then, going from middle school, and then I went all the way through 12th grade. And especially, as a person of color in Western Massachusetts, that high school experience was also really amazing at Williston. And it really created this home for me where I could see people of so many different cultures and places. And it made me feel so at home and so welcomed, which I just have such a special relationship with Williston because of that. And I started track as a 7th grader, as a lanky 7th grader. I'm sure Miss Lucia, you remember just showing up at the track and just running, and people would laugh at me, but it was fine because I was running fast. And then my first love at the time was actually soccer. So I know, Sydney, you also did multiple sports as well, but my first love was soccer. That was my fall trimester sport. And then winter was basketball, and then track and field. And then as the years went on, I started to identify so much with track and field, and I was having success, and the track team was just such a family. I made my best friends just on the track and at those track practices and at those track meets, and I started to slowly fall in love with it. And then, I think it was my sophomore, junior years when I started to, take it a little more seriously, have some goals for myself, and started working really hard. Miss McCullough came on board as well, and I know I did cross country and track with her, and we've just grown. I just grew so much as an athlete in those last couple of years, and it really became a part of my identity over time. And then, I started getting faster times. I got recruited by a few coaches going into my senior year. one of them being the Harvard track and field coach. And he actually came to one of my soccer games fall of my senior year. And that's where I met him. He came to watch me play at a varsity home game. And then I ended up choosing Harvard. And then that journey was also, it was very challenging for me. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't go into that thinking that I would be an NCAA champion, thinking I would become a professional athlete. And I remembered being very challenged. I remember there were a lot of tears in that first year. I told Ms. McCullough about it a lot and how much I was struggling with having, a really hard coach and really having to challenge myself. And then I just kind of had to adapt to what track was becoming in my life. And then around the same time, same time span, around my junior year of college, I actually ended up running a lot faster times and setting more serious goals for myself. And that's when I ended up breaking a collegiate record. And then when that happened, everything just kind of changed and transformed very quickly. That's when New Balance or other sponsors actually started showing interest as well, like Adidas and Nike. But I was very fond of New Balance because I've been wearing New Balance all through college, and I love them as a company. And they had interest, and I feel like I still just signed the contract because my first year running pro was 2019, and that was my senior year of college. And then I graduated, and last year 2020 was supposed to be my first breakout year as a pro athlete. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so this year is really it for me. It's an Olympic year. It's my first season running out of college. And I have just this newfound love for track and field that I don't really think I appreciated prior to now, even in high school or in college. So that's where I'm at now. And I moved to Austin, Texas to train with an elite training group of Olympic sprinters. So three of them have been to the Olympics, 2016 in Rio. And then there are two of us who joined as newer athletes, just trying to learn from the vets and earn our spot on the Olympic team. So that's where I'm at now. And I'm just truly loving it. Like Sidney mentioned, running has become a huge source of self-care for me, not just from the physical aspect of running, but it's all of it. It's having that running community that I found. So even dating back to when I was talking about Williston, running in high school or in middle school, I developed and created this community of people around me on that Williston track team, including my coaches, who that was my safe space. That was my home. That was my happy place. I loved it so much. Even going on to college, Sidney and I were just talking about a mutual connection that we had. Someone on my teammate from Harvard, still just my best friend today. I still have a very close relationship with all of those girls, with my coach, and now moving to Austin and having this community before I even moved here, knowing that we're going to be looking out for each other, and then I'm spending all of my time with these people that I respect, who challenge me and push me. And that community itself is very, very crucial just for my emotional well-being. As well as setting goals for yourself, the nutrition piece, being physically fit, and how that helps you focus on other aspects of your life. So running has just become just such a big part of my actual emotional and physical well-being, that I hope everyone can actually have that relationship. And it doesn't have to just be with running, but I think running is it's a great place to start. Just because you can just lace up some shoes and take to the streets, as Sidney would say.
I love that the aspect of community is still so important, even at a high level, right? Like for me, community is because we get into 2014. I'm like middle age, well, middle 20s, right? You get to mid 20s, and you've had all of this. I know, like in this context, like, what are you talking about? You get to this time in your life where like that community of high school and college camaraderie in your first couple of years in corporate or whatever job you go, where community is just built into it, and so you have to kind of find yourself and find those folks. And the fact that it's so important to you as well at a high level, and to us who are just the everyday runner is powerful. And I really believe in the power of community in getting through anything and everything, and running just being one of them.
It's all Sebastian. Yeah. I think going off of that, moving to Texas was very, very intimidating. So I'm looking at him take Sebastian away. That's so funny. But yeah, what was it? Yeah, moving to Texas was very intimidating. I mean, I didn't know the first thing about being a professional athlete just from my background. A lot of people in track and field kind of grew up doing it and kind of running those AAU meets, which is something that I wasn't super familiar with. A lot of these professional athletes they were running in Texas, they were running in Georgia, they were running in Florida. So me coming in as this girl from Western Massachusetts is not something that you see very frequently in these spaces, in these settings. So finding that community that I did when I moved down here was, I think, such a monumental part of the success that I'm having right now. And for people who do want to follow my races, you can look at my Instagram. It's at Gabby Thomas, but I started racing in January, and I'm actually, getting into the middle of my season right now. And the races have been going so well for me. And a lot of that is part of just the support system that I have right now, and even the support system that I had before. But yeah, I just think that's
Awesome.
a huge part of it.
I also love that. We've heard what's been going on at Nike with the athletes there and how they're treated, and the fact that it's like almost the total opposite for you that's awesome. I love that. And that it's not, the community and the folks around you aren't like an added stress to the running.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a benefit, because that's so important.
Absolutely.
So do we want to talk about just like running in general? In terms of like, I can talk about how to get into running if you're an early, or if you want to get into running, right? I think a lot of us, I mean, Gabby's and I bet you some of the things I'm going to talk about, Gabby will talk about as well, because it's just the simple act of just starting, I think, is the most important part. Not worrying about your pace, not worrying about anything other than how your body feels, and putting your mind to getting out of the door. And even honestly, even starts with even just the narrative in your mind of like, I'm a runner. If you have a body and you can move your legs, you have the ability to run. Even if it's moving, walk, run, walk. I know a lot of folks deal with injuries, and so like, I've had knee surgeries, both my knees. And so like, if you have issues, I would definitely consult doctors. Let me just say that. Consult a physical therapist, a movement specialist, all that. But yeah, just setting the mindset of saying that you're a runner, and that's just half the battle. Getting out the door is half the battle. Putting on your shoes, going to your track, even running around your block. Once you get comfortable with movement, once you get comfortable with running maybe 10 minutes without stopping, then you can start thinking, or maybe 20 minutes without stopping, then you can start thinking about, training for something. And then like, once you're running 3 miles, we can start talking about pace. And so that's kind of like the beginning of how I would recommend just getting into running. I'm not sure where folks are, or what else, how deep to dive there.
Yeah,
I mean, you could talk about.
I'm curious, Sidney, when you started your running club, what were like the most common, challenges or barriers that people had to overcome, like before they actually started or even got to joining the running club?
100% the mental aspect of it. Like the seeing runners on Instagram, seeing people out there running and being like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm not on your level. Oh, I can't keep up. It's like, all right, then you can't. If you already told yourself that, if you're already coming into this saying, I can't do it, then you're right. You're not gonna be able to do it. But just opening your mind and saying, yeah, I'll try it. And the community will do the rest. Like, come, like we've recently introduced a 1 mile route, 1 mile walk, run, just to get people out. Because getting you out is the first step, and the community will do the rest. Like, we will push you through your first mile. We will push you through 2 to 3 miles. And next thing you know, you're running your first race. And so that's why the power of community is important.
Mm-hmm.
And just that just building that mental, like, I don't want to say mental toughness, just changing your mindset.
Right.
is the biggest component to it. And then yeah, after that, it's like, what shoes do I wear? This hurts, that hurts. Am I going too fast? And then we get into all that stuff. But I like to make it as simple as possible. Get out, start walking, running.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can definitely personally attest to that. For me, I like to keep it very simple. I know, what I do is very different than just trying to get out and run. But even at my level, I think starting out, I remember how intimidating it was. When I went to Harvard to running at the D1 level, I remember all the nerves that were going through me. I wasn't sure if that was something that I would be capable of handling. Um, I didn't see myself as a mature runner, but like you're saying, I think that's okay. It's okay to like just put yourself out there and be an amateur runner, because it's all about the mindset. And then where you're starting now, it isn't necessarily where you're going to finish. And it doesn't really even matter where you finish. Because a lot of times running for me at this point is not something where I'm focusing on the outcomes. If I focused on the outcome all the time, I don't know what I would do. I would just have crises. I'd be in constant state of crises. You would lose your mind if you're focusing on what you're going to accomplish and how good you're going to be and what you're going to get out of it. For me, it's always been about the process and having fun with the process. And that's what it is right now for me too. So I think starting out, what would I do? I would first take the mindset that, I'm doing it for my wellness, for some fun. And I think that's huge, but also to the point of finding the right apparel can also be intimidating. That's something that I did not think about a lot until college. And even then, not till the very end of college. Unfortunately, New Balance is a sponsor where they put a lot. I'm not like I'm promoting New Balance. I'm very.
She's not paid by New Balance, right? It's not like she's paid by
New Balance paid me to be here. No. But they put a lot of effort and time and technology into their footwear products, which is actually, that's kind of a big reason of why I chose to go with them to begin with. So in all, full disclosure and transparency, they care a lot. They're not, just selling crap for your feet that looks good. It's a really great starter footwear, and just trying on what makes you feel good. I send footwear to like my family sometimes, and they write me back and say, hey, I hated this. It didn't make me feel good. So it's a matter of also finding shoes that make you feel good and make you feel like empowered to run, because that's kind of a big part of it. People will go for a run and then they feel really bad after it, but you don't, understand the importance of, well, you might want to look at what you're putting on your feet too. Maybe, your body's not the problem. It's what you're wearing. And even not just footwear, but other apparel as well can be really empowering, and just taking the time to figure out what's right for your body, and just what feels good for you, because that's the whole point of it, right? It's to feel good. And that's what I love about running. So I think that's a very important, probably a little tedious first step that might be a little intimidating. I mean, I'm still looking for footwear that I love. I try different New Balance shoes all the time, and trying to figure out which one's my favorite ones and which one I wear for certain training days. So I definitely know that's an intimidating process, but it makes a huge difference in a workout.
It does. And to hop on that, if you go to your local running store, they'll do something that's called a gait analysis, and they'll let you try on different shoes. So they'll, different stores do it differently, but locally at Marathon Sports, they'll watch you run and they'll see how your foot lands, and they'll recommend shoes that's best for kind of how you land. If you're flat-footed, they'll give you some support, and give you some support. And then if you're heel striking, they'll give you some support there. And so that's a good way to do it. And then you can also test, like Nike does tests for 30 days. You can return sneakers, so go out and run. If you're getting different pains, change it for something else. So huge component. So thank you for adding that, Gabby. That's very true. It's interesting that even at your level, that you go through that too, because I would just assume that they would make sneakers just for you.
Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how much at the pro level, it's actually very crazy how often people are wearing shoes that aren't right for them. My training partners they were wearing a particular shoe model, and they had the same Achilles problem, and it was definitely attributed to the shoe. And it was crazy that this is happening at the pro level, but it is something that's very important to think about. And it can make or break, your running experience. So very important thing to start with, thinking about what feels good for you.
Tell me about how you warm up for your,
Oh my
I know,
gosh.
because you also, maybe not just the 200, 300 meters, but like you have to go for long runs, right?
No. The last long run I did was cross country sophomore year at Wilson. And I had to walk out the mission. Sorry.
At your level, you don't have to go for a couple miles?
No.
Oh, wow. Oh,
do it.
I couldn't.
Warm up was brutal. I remember when my first week at Harvard, when we went into warm up. That warm up was 45 minutes long to an hour, and that was part of why I was very intimidated by the collegiate program, because I was tired just in the warm up. So we're not running the entire time, but you want to be very dynamic and make sure with sprinting, it's very crucial that you are all the way warmed up, or else you will be injured. So that means the warm up has to be very intentional. It has to be specific to what you're doing that day. But am I doing any runs over 400 meters? No, I might jog a lap at first, but I'm not doing that. I will say that my coach did have us do a mile gut run during fall training this year, and that was very painful. And I sound like a sissy right now. It's like, oh, mile was really.
The 1 mile is hard. It is. If you're doing it as fast as you're talking a gut, when I hear gut run, I hear like you running until it hurts. And so I mean that's as hard as running a 5K. That's as hard as running. Like it is hard to do that. But yeah, you like you said, for sprinting you have to be as warm as, because you're coming straight out of it. It's only 200-300 meters. I could talk about how I warm up for my long. When I say long runs, I'm talking like 10 miles. For a regular run, which is anywhere from 3 to 5 miles, it's really about warming up your body and staying dynamic, and we call dynamic warm-ups as opposed to static warm-ups. So like static is just like kind of stretching, like you're holding your leg up for 10 seconds, holding the other leg up for 10 seconds. That's like what you want to do when you're done. To start, it's really about doing it quickly. So like you're pulling your leg up for a second, 2 seconds, shaking it out, do the other one. They do that 3 times per side, 4 times per side. Warm up, so I like to warm up my entire body, starting with my lower body, getting it ready, basically turning it on before you start using it. Anything, so your lower legs, your upper legs, swing your arms out, jog your knees, and really just loosen up. And when you start your first time going out for a run, you really want to stay nice and relaxed, like really release all of the tension, especially in your upper body. Like you want to really let your legs do the work. So jaw is nice and loose, shoulders are nice and relaxed. A lot of us are like this, and then we want to run and we want to get faster, and we're getting tighter up here as we're trying to get faster. Gabby, when you're running fast, are you like staying tight up here, or are you
nope.
letting it go, right? You let the legs do the work.
You bring up a really good point. And just the first part of the warm-ups, I think a very critical point that you made that a lot of people don't realize is that the static stretching before you run versus after, you definitely don't want to hold those stretches for too long. Like you said, you do a quick static stretch for a second. I normally hold for like a 3 or 5 count. Even then, maybe just a 3 count, just because it actually can be, it can be injury inducing if you overstretch before you start your actual running, especially as a sprinter. I'm not sure with the longer distances how crucial it would be, but with I know with short sprinting, holding those long static stretches before you start can be not only dangerous, but it also you're training your muscles initially to just go a little slower, so you won't be quite as explosive. And then there was also the piece that you brought up about relaxing, which I think is very important too. Before all of my races, even in practice and warm up, when I am warming up, I include a meditation piece before I start, just to get my body like very relaxed and in a steady state. just not even just your body, but your mental, because, you know, the brain piece is also a huge part of what your body does, you know, making sure that both your mind and body are very relaxed so that when you start running, you're not wound up. That's a very big piece, not just because, you know, you can actually end up hurting yourself if you're too tight, but it also just makes it more enjoyable when you feel good, you know, you run good. So that's what I kind of say. It's not grammatically correct, but I tell myself that a lot of the
Feel good,
time.
run good.
Yeah, feel good, run good. Yeah, that's a very, very important part of my warm up as well.
Yeah. I like to say, find your breath, find your bounce, like find your rhythm, you know, get out there. For longer distances, it probably takes you a mile to warm up. That first mile is going to suck. At least that first mile is not going to feel as good as it should. Like for me at this age, you know, with the knee surgeries and the injuries, it takes me a good mile and a half to 2 miles to really start feeling good. Like I could easily quit within that first mile and be like, oh, I can't do this today. So it takes a while, you know, just really calming down your mind. So I love the meditation piece, because it's just your mind. It's your mind. Your mind. If you say you can't do it, if you say it hurts too much, you're just gonna stop. And so really preparing your mind, and a lot of what I do is I visualize sometimes, and I don't like to run my watch as much anymore because it also is, you know, it could be a determinant if you're always just looking to see how fast you're going. And so sometimes I just like to go out and do it on feel and be like, and visualize my run. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm going for a 3 mile run. I'm gonna go to this block, go left, take it up this road. That's gonna be a hill. Slow it down, let the hill come to me, nice and relaxed. Get to the top, making it right here. It's downhill, pick it up a bit. So like really visualizing myself out there and doing it is helpful, and it just gets me out there and ready to go, and not even thinking the doubt, because I try not to let the doubt sneak in, because if it does, then it's like I'm not getting out the door. And so
It's actually interesting how many parallels there are between the type of running you do, Sydney, and the type of running that I do, actually, because the visual piece of it is also equally important in what I do. Every time before we do, you know, what might be a hard practice or even just an elite level race, is the visualization piece. It's very important. You don't want to leave a lot of room for doubt in your mind, because even at, you know, the pro level, there's a lot of space for that, and it might creep in. So, you know, a really part of my race prep strategy is that visualization piece. I even try to know what lane that I'm going to be running in at any given meet. So I'm running in Eugene, Oregon this weekend. And I just go through my race plan and I go through those visualizations and see, okay, when I get here. So when I get to the blocks, maybe, you know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do when I hear that gun go off? What am I going to focus on at that moment? And then, you know, moving past the first 10 meters, what am I going to do then? Moving past 30 meters, what am I going to do then? And just keeping calm and knowing that, you know, I have that visualization of how this race is going to play out and what I'm going to do, and focusing on what I can control is such a big part of it. There's something else that you mentioned that I wanted to touch base on that I cannot quite remember, and it's going to bother me. Oh gosh, I should have taken a note.
you're using your watch, looking at your watch, looking at your time.
Oh man, it'll come to me.
Finding your breath, finding your breath, finding your bounce.
All these gems. I can't. You dropped so many gems, Sidney. Gosh.
What I will add as you think is, as you're talking through that, I remember hugging the curve on that 200, on that, you know, on the back half of that 400, just like enjoying hugging that curve and then letting go on that last 100. And so you just brought me back to visualizing that, which I love and miss. I do miss running shorter distances. I really do. I just can't do them as fast anymore. And so it's not as fun.
Yeah.
I'm not the fastest person. It's not as fun. At least I know distance I could at least be, you know, I like to say my best running years are still ahead of me. I've been injured for like 2 years.
I love that.
And so like, yeah, you know, my running years, my best running years ahead of me. So we just actually had, and the reason why I'm thinking that now is we just had marathon champion and 50K world record holder, Des Linden, just join us for one of our runs this past weekend. She came to Boston and she came to visit our running team.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. She's like 5'1", 97 pounds. Like she's tiny. And
Wow.
she's like the fastest 50K runner in the world, and won the 2018 Boston Marathon. And so she's, she's 37, and I'm like, she's doing this at
Oh,
37 now. Like, what can I do?
wow.
I still got something left to me.
And she,
Yeah,
wow, that is that's very, very cool that she
yeah,
is
she's
keeping at this time.
yeah, she's doing really well. And then she came in. So this past weekend was the Boston Marathon weekend. Officially, unofficially, obviously it got pushed to October this year. But then they came out and we had one of our teammates was selected to go run 1 mile. Well, it was a fake PR stunt, 1 mile to cross I don't know if you guys saw it, to cross the Boston Marathon finish line and with Des, and to announce that she's running Boston in 2021. But one of our runners got selected, and so we got to be there with her. And she came and spoke and hung out with us, and she's like super cool and down to earth. And same things I'm telling you here, she's what she's telling us. She led us through a warm up, and it was actually a little light, a little lighter than I would have done. And she's winning marathons, and so it's just, when you break it down, it's just simple, as simple as you keep it. And you know is and mindset, and the simplicity of just getting out the doors. It was part of her story, and just showing up. Another big part of her story was just showing up. She wasn't, she fell into running and got better as she got older, and so like she didn't think she was going to be this person that she is, and she just kept showing up.
I love that. That's very, very cool. I mean, I can definitely attest to that. I think the hardest part for me every time I show up to do any type of training race is that initial warm up. It's just the hardest part about it when you're getting started, and everything just feels so intimidating before you actually get into doing it. Especially when you see a hard workout on that sheet. I mean, the coach has a hard workout written down. The hardest part is showing up to practice, and
Yes.
that initial warm up lap. You're just dreading it, but it's always fine as long as you show up. So I love that point.
The one lap though, come on. I miss those days. I remember though, I know, I was like, why would anyone run more than a lap on it ever? Why would anyone ever run before?
See, so you understand, and then here you are.
Yeah, and here I am on the other side. Let's see here. I have a question here that I'm gonna quickly jump to. Okay, so what inspired me to bring running to my community? Yeah, so Gabby, do you want to add anything else before I got into this, and then we can open up for questions?
That's okay. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So I touched a bit upon it before. Running, and so I have had so much privilege in my life. At the age of 14, when my street that I'm actually living on now, I live in the house that I grew up in. My parents moved to the suburbs. My brother lives upstairs with his baby. I live downstairs with my baby. We live on a gentrified street now, but before it wasn't gentrified. I mean, it's still pretty dangerous, unfortunately. But at the age of 14, when a lot of people were being shot on my street, I got the privilege to go to Williston and get away from here. And then I went to UMass. I got an accounting degree, and I found myself at this firm doing a lot of travel, seeing the world, making good money. And I would always just come home and just see what was going on here, and seeing the people that I left here when I was 14 still here with not much going on. And for me, it was like, why does it have to be that I have to be the saved? Like, why do I have to be the one saved and given all this opportunity when the rest of us here, my neighbors, my friends that I grew up with, are here just stuck? And so what I've seen since leaving, I guess the reason why I left PwC was to start a music festival to bring musical experiences that I saw in Austin, Texas, in Seattle, Washington, other parts of the country, bring them to Boston for people of color, because that just wasn't happening here, and it was happening everywhere else. And so like I left the firm to do that. And even before that, I was like, how can I get more people of color to the firm? Like, I'm at this big firm making good money. Like, how come there's only a few of us here? And so like the common thread for me has always been like, how do I bring more experiences to communities of color, people that look like me? people who need it, and people who aren't getting it. And so when I found running, and I found how much it was changing my life, and how much it was adding like purpose and clarity to this time in my life where I was like had quit a 6-figure salary to try and like create a music festival, which failed. And I was working at Nike, clocking in for 11 an hour. I was like, man, this is helping me. It's got to help other people. It's got to help other people. It's simple. It's easy. No one's doing it. If a kid is not waking up on a Saturday and seeing someone run outside of their window, then they're never going to think about running. If we want to change the future of running, we got to start with the youth. And so that's what I'm inspired to do, is really bring running to everyone. And so that's why I became a running coach. I'm actually just launching as a running coach on an app called Stay on Pace. So if you go to stayonpace.com, I'm over here, stayonpace.com. It's I'm like trying to keep this simplicity of running and the way I talk about running, and to bring it to everyone, because I think that everyone can, as long as you're not intimidated and you change your mindset, you can do it. Versus like, you get into running, everyone's talking about marathoning and PRing and running a best 5K and threshold this. And it's like, no, just get out there, find the track, run around it, or run around the block. And like, let's just start there. Like, let's just start very simple. And so that's my spiel.
That's really cool, Sidney. I think it's interesting because even just at my level, I don't quite understand what's happening, but just when you look around and you see how the track disciplines are just different demographically, it's shocking. You can look at it even at the college level, or even at the high school level, and certainly at the pro level. But all of the distance running space, anything over 400 meters, pretty much, it's a white space, and that has to stem from somewhere, right? It's a cultural thing. It's an environmental thing, but even when we do look at the runners or the sprinters who are pros, and they're people of color, but it's that way because that's kind of what people of color have to do, right? You're running fast, and then you get a scholarship to a university, and then this is how they make a living, right? The people that I run with, and I'm speaking about the United States, the people that I run with, they're running because they're running for their life. Like this is their way out. Even as I look at my training partners, I look at my competitors, this is their way out of, underprivileged and under-resourced circumstances. This is how they're making money. This is how they're feeding their family. And that's how they found themselves into running track and sprinting. And it wasn't this, oh, I'm going to go for a run in my neighborhood because that's what people are doing. I'm going to go run because it feels good. And then you get good at it. And then you start doing it at elite levels. And that's kind of like how the white people find themselves into these spaces. And, as the New Balance runner as well, I'm the first female sprinter, but I'm very acquainted with the other New Balance athletes, and they're primarily distance runners. And New Balance has primarily signed white people because of that. And so I'm one of the first Black people that they did sign. They signed two male sprinters before me, but then it was me, just because, that wasn't what people of color were doing. We're just not getting out there. And there probably are a lot of reasons for that. I'm sure Sidney is very familiar with those reasons. I mean, even just when you talk about how you grew up, and what your street looked like. Is that a street where you really felt like you could just lace up your shoes and go outside and go for a nice run? Or was that not something that, you would feel super comfortable doing? And I'm curious to hear about, even now getting your running club started in Boston. Boston is very interesting. I love Boston and I have a great relationship with it. But, during my time in college there, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen how segregated it is. I've seen that gentrification, and I see that. And, I know where the people of color live in those neighborhoods. And I wonder, how do you motivate them to get out and just lace up their shoes and go for a run? Because, it's
So I talk a lot. I talk about this a lot now. And I even started a podcast about it, Fitness in Color. where I actually hosted one of Gabby's best friends from Harvard, and I didn't even know until today or the other day, which is awesome to be full circle. But yeah, so like you said, Gabby, above sprinting, when you get into the world that I live in terms of running, it's predominantly white, not many people of color. In this country, we're not, kids, like I said, I mentioned, kids are not seeing themselves in runners. Like Black and brown kids in this country are not seeing themselves in those long distance running spaces.
They're
And
told
it's
to play
because it's not,
basketball or football. You know, if you're not doing that, then what are you doing?
yeah. And that's what source, I mean, Boston. Let's talk about Boston. Boston's track and field and cross country. Boston's cross country program for high school, there's one across the city. One cross country that you have to, that the team meets outside of school somewhere, that you have to go to. And so like, how are you developing cross country kids when there's one team across the whole city of Boston? You know, versus like there are a lot of basketball teams and football teams and other sports. But so there's that investment, and it's also streets historically weren't safe. Also, when someone's running in a neighborhood like mine, you're often running, people, you know, it's associated with running from or violence or to commit violence. And so there are all these things that are built into us as Americans, you know, Black and brown people, white people, we all associate fear with darker skin, like all of us, we all do. And it's been, you know, that's how we've been raised in this country. And so running in a neighborhood like mine has never been safe for, you know, for all those reasons. And it's part of the reason why it's really hard to get people out now. It's like, why are you, like, they just look at me like, what are you doing? Like, why are you running here? And it's also, now that it's a bit more normal, now that they've seen us for 5 years, it's like they honk the horn and like, you know, it's like, if you if you go on that link I sent, stayonpace.com after this, and then watch the YouTube video on me, you could see like I'm running in a neighborhood and I'm saying hi to people as they're driving because they're either honking and they're like, why are you running? It's like, it's still not normal. As long as we've been doing it, like I can go run in the back bay and no one's gonna say a word to me. They're not gonna say hi to me. They're not gonna ask me what I'm running from, what am I running to. And that's still happening in my neighborhood. And just imagine if that was happening to you, how weird that would be. And so it's really about changing the narrative. And how can we change the narrative? And my approach to changing the narrative is to create a lot of noise in the areas that we live, make sure we're running in the streets, make sure we're running as a pack, make sure that it's multi-generational. And then we're also starting with the youth. Like if you want to change, you really have to start with the kids because they're going to become the future. And unless we start with them, there's really, you know, just fighting an uphill battle. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
That is awesome. I love that representation in it. It's just always it's so interesting to see it, that difference. I see that we have a question.
Meredith, what's going on, Meredith?
So this might be a good time for us to here's and take some questions. And so thank you for this free-ranging conversation. And we're going to take you off of Spotlight. So those who've been watching, if you want to go ahead and put back in gallery view so you feel like we're all here together, we can do that. If you have questions, you can just put it to the chat. Hey, I have a question. And we'll get to you in the order it comes in. You can unmute and you can ask your question directly of Gabby or Sidney. You can also raise your hand with the raise your hand icon, and we'll sort of just call on people and let you unmute and turn this into a conversation. I feel like there's so much to talk about. I had a big revelation while you were talking about running is actually not a solitary endeavor, which I always thought it was. So I'm hearing you say really clearly that community is so important. And that's probably why I'm such a failed runner, is I always think that this is a lonely, painful thing one does by themselves for the endorphins. It sounds like it's all, and also I'm hearing it's important that like you look good and you feel good. So, you know, Sidney, I'd like to hear more about what drove you to create your apparel line. And so many questions, but before my questions, we can turn it over and
I can start with Meredith's question here. I've read it, and then I'll let Gabby touch. Meredith, I know we've talked about this before a couple of years ago that you've been dealing with this. For me, when I'm running, if I'm going anywhere between 3 and 5, you know, I'm eating toast, banana, Sometimes up to a bagel, like that might be too much. But I mean, I like to eat before I go out because I don't want to be hungry. That's like the hardest part for me. I haven't been running more than 7 to 10 miles, so I haven't been like working on my nutrition above that, because once you get to like 12 and you're getting into marathon training, then you have to start carrying food with you. Um, you know, goos, and sometimes what I do is I put peanut butter and honey into a Ziploc bag, and I scrunch it into the corner and bite off a piece of it, and then just kind of like slowly give myself that as I'm going, just to kind of fuel myself. But for me, I like to eat bananas and toast, butter, nothing too crazy, and I enjoy coffee after. But I'm sorry that you're still dealing with that, Meredith. I know that that was something that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Gabby, what do you like to eat?
Gosh, yeah, I don't run super long, so I'm not, with sprinting, it's easy. I mean, you just go run for a few seconds and you should be okay. But I typically, I mean, I'm like you, Sydney. I think it's really important for me to just eat super, super clean before I do any type of workout, even. So that would look like, toast or just some fruit. But again, I don't run too long, so any issues that I would have wouldn't particularly pertain to the actual running. But I think the only way to really avoid that would be, to eat clean and light enough where you're having, the calorie intake that you need to sustain yourself through the workout. But
Yeah, and it's also like the Cliff bars. I used to do those a lot. You can also, I mean, if you get into 3 miles, or after three, if that three is hurting, like maybe at 2 to 3, you're starting to fuel, like trying. I mean, honestly, it's really trial and error what works for you. I used to do the goos. I don't like the goos anymore. I just make my own at home with peanut butter and honey. And sometimes, yeah, I like to eat like a granola bar, like anything that has a little bit of sugar in it. You
yeah.
can hold that. You can
Or
hold
I
it down. It
wonder
should be
if
good.
hydration too. I wonder if that's a piece of it. I'm very, very, very hyper focused about my hydration, like
Yeah.
even the day before I run.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from
Bruce has a question.
Bruce, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, thanks a lot for this great talk. I have a number of things I want to talk about. First of all, you guys are talking about records. Well, at Williston, I had a 50-year record.
Okay, I like that.
So you have Gabby, you probably have some records that'll take a few more years to beat that.
I hope so. We were talking about, we hope they last 10 years.
Well, it's funny because it's like the trivia, they say, well, you get in a group and they say, tell us something that no one knows about you. And they say, well, I have this high school record for 50 years.
Yes.
I love that.
And it was a swimming record when Williston was a swimming powerhouse. And I guess this past year last year in 20, they won the New England championships and beat our record. So I'm sure Jill knows about that.
50 years, that's awesome.
So that's like crazy. I mean, it's like a trivia thing. The second thing is I live in Austin, Texas.
No way.
So, yeah, I do. I went to UT. I went to University of Pennsylvania after Williston, and then came to UT and studied human biology and sports science at UT. I have a PhD from UT. So,
wow.
And I worked at, I was a consultant to UT Athletics for 15 years, and I created athletic training software we trained over 400,000 athletic sessions a year. And this was 30 years ago. So we had, I had lots of elite athletes like you that I trained, that I worked with. And worked with coaches mostly that helped those people. So I've been in the wellness area my whole career. I also worked for IBM for some time, but and now I'm doing something very interesting with what I call sports neurology. And you talk about meditation and visualization and that type of stuff. And it's really, I always say it's God's work because I created this vibrational, I call it vibrational massage, that puts people into ultra relaxation state. And I've worked with a number of runners, mostly long distance runners. I haven't worked with any sprinters, but I worked with some of the long distance runners here in town. And visualization, they actually can envision a whole race. So I'd love to reach out to you in particular and share this with you and see if it's something that you could work into your routine. So that's my offer in terms of connecting with you.
I love that, Bruce. My major actually for undergrad was neurobiology. And
then you'll dig this so much, okay? You will dig, because that's what it is, okay? I was a physiologist, you know, working with elite athletes primarily. I started the women's sports medicine program as a graduate student at UT. I was the first, you know, I wasn't the lead. I had a professor who was leading it, but I worked with all the early women's athletes at UT. And that program has grown and taken on its own life. And I moved into the mind body stuff about 10 years ago in earnest, after having a bout of insomnia. And then I always say God guided me through this process of, I said, I got to be able to do something better with insomnia, because mostly it's anxiety and not being able to quiet your mind. And so I started, you know, using my doctorate work and the idea of research. I started really digging into neurobiology. Okay, and that's really what I am. I'm really an expert in neurobiology and embodied therapy. You know, so
I love that intersection. That is right up my alley.
It's right up your alley. So that's why, you know, it's like, okay, this gal's in Austin. She does, you know, I've got to get on this call. So that's my story, and it's sort of pretty crazy.
Sweet, Bruce. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about that. Definitely want to connect after.
Yeah, we'll connect up here in the next week or two, and see what I'd love to do with Sidney too. I love what Sidney's doing. I think, you know, bringing sports to particularly populations that aren't used to that is something that's you know, very, very important, obviously, because we all know that exercise is, you know, keeps you healthy.
Yeah. Mind,
and
body,
you know,
soul. And
particularly in the Black community, I mean, there is disparity in health. Yes. Part of it is that. Part of it is a lack of a cultural awareness of that stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, so I'm all in on that. I'll text you my number, Gabby, so you can have it.
Thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate that.
You can send a message through the chat here if you wanted to do that, if that's easy for you.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
So I think we had a couple questions that were pre-submitted. Larry, I know you had a question. If it was answered, if you wanted to and check in.
Yes, my question was, what can you do to prevent injury, specifically knee injuries?
Runners. Go ahead, Gabby.
For me, I mean, I find that a lot of that is prevented with, well, one, injuries are mostly prevented with sleep and nutrition, but then also with your strength and how you do your strength training outside of running. But primarily the two things that you can really focus on is just the sleep and nutrition aspect, and making sure your body's recovered. That's a big piece that people miss. And even though you're not like it's not directly attributed to you know, the actual point of injury or the time of injury, it's just a very overlooked piece of it. But also making sure that your body is strong enough to withstand whatever repetitive like trauma that you're putting on it. So if you are, you know, overrunning or overworking yourself, that is trauma to your body. Even though you're, you know, doing more good than harm. Usually when you're running, you can kind of overdo it. There's a balance, but making sure that your body is strong enough to withstand whatever trauma that you're putting on it. So I'm not sure what type of strength training, if any, you do, Sydney, while you guys are doing the distance running, but you can even just do body strength training in your free time. That might look like, like yoga or like, any type of stretching stuff that can help strengthen the muscles around.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that. Because what I was going to start with is runners get injured. Like part of being a runner is being injured, to be honest with you, and especially at the amount of miles we run. But however, what Gabby was saying is like spot on. And then also listening to your body, like listen to your body. Being a part of a community could also push you out, like push you to be doing more than you should be doing. Like your friends are going for it, they're getting faster, you want to get better. You're chasing some, either some pace or, some joy, and you're just pushing your body over what it shouldn't be doing. And so listening to your body, strength training, cross training, making sure you are diversifying your workouts, and making sure that you're using every part of your body is important too. So, yeah, I mean, I have 2 bad knees. I'm still running. All I did was just transfer that pain up into my hip. So I'm working through that now. But you'd be interested, you'd be surprised at how much like an injury on your left side is going to affect your right side, or because your body's always going to make up or take on more on one end. Gabby has a friend here that's super cute.
Oh, this is Rico, my pug. I just got him a few months ago, actually.
Rico.
Yeah. Reiterate what Sidney said. I feel like I am kind of just constantly in a state of accepted pain.
Yeah.
That's okay. But
Unfortunately.
also, yeah, unfortunately, but it's a good pain. I like it. And one side of your body will tend to overcompensate for the other if you do have a strength deficit. So just monitoring that and making sure that you're listening to your body.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any other questions out there? I know there are more. I see runners who I know must have questions.
Did you have pre-recorded questions, Joe?
We had another question about, which I think you kind of covered, but we had another question about, we had a question that came in about shoes, like finding the right running shoes for your feet and body style. And I think you talked about, trying to get into your runner shop and getting some expert advice. But I suppose if you don't have access to that, say you're not somewhere with Marathon Sports, which we're lucky enough to have in Northampton, right? What do you do? How do you figure it out? Do you order a couple different pairs, return the ones you don't like, them lightly? Like maybe a little more advice for people who don't have a runner shop in easy access to them.
What I would recommend is getting your iPhone, having someone record you running, then slowing it down in slow-mo, watching how your foot hits. I mean, this is what they're going to do for you at a store anyway. Watching how your foot lands. Like, are you pronating, supinating, heel striking? Or is your foot flat? Like, is your the inside of your feet? I forget what is this low to the ground? What am I talking about? This part of your foot here. Like some people that's flat. Yeah, your arch. Yeah, is your arch too low? If it's caving in, you probably need support to push it up. One of my good friends was on here earlier. He left. James Patch. He has really flat feet, and I remember it from high school. Like really flat feet. It's like he needs the support because his feet's just gonna hurt if he goes out and run like that. And And I used to be a heel striker. When I started running long distance, and then I transitioned over time to being a midfoot striker, which takes a bit of the impact off of it. But yeah.
And then the same person who asked about shoes had a question about preparing for a longer race. And I think you touched on that a little bit about having, what you might like need to eat if you're running. And Gabby, I think you said a little bit about like how important it is to hydrate, like even the day prior. If you know you have a long race coming up, if you've been training, if you're going to run a longer race, are there any other really important things to bear in mind, day prior, day of, day after?
Yeah, I can start with that since Gabby doesn't run more than a lap.
I know. I get this question all the time. I'm always like, I don't run too long, so it doesn't matter so much.
I mean, it's simple as making sure you're hydrated. Like you used to be surprised at how many people just miss that. Like they want to drink beers and they want to live their normal lives, which is fine. But like you make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating clean. And also like just tapering off a bit, like your training plan, making sure that the 2 weeks before you're not, putting on a ton of miles. You're really just making sure your body's prepped and ready to go. So just around your planning, your training around that. It's like how your training plan is like ramping up and then cooling off and giving you that week to kind of rest a bit, but also keep it sharp. And then just going out there and doing it. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I love this question here. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. I see. I was just going to go on to that next one.
Yeah. The races that you're most proud of. Well, I used to be fast in high school. I'm not fast in the real world. Like, so I actually love to talk about when I broke the 100 record. The first, it was like, we're all old here. So it was like, I was in high school. I had gone out. I stayed at a friend's house, signed out for the weekend, had a good weekend, was hungover the next morning, had to travel out to one of those New England colleges with a blue track. Gabby, you remember what schools had a blue track? Was it like
Blue track?
One of those H schools out in Connecticut.
Was it not Hotchkiss? Blue track.
Yeah, it was Hotchkiss. Yeah. And I just remember it clear as night, like clear. Like it was like I was hungover. I was wearing the same socks I was wearing from the night before. I didn't even have my track socks, and I just like, ran a 10.8 in the 100, and then ran a 22.7 in the 200, and I was like, what? I was not prepared for this. And maybe it was because I was so calm and collected, and was like, I had been chasing this record all year, and then so that's a memorable one. And then after that, I ran a half marathon in the rain in 2017, where I had a goal and I hit that goal like to the minute, to the second. And I just remember it being just like phenomenal and just feeling great.
Oh, yeah. For me, I think at the high school level, when our 4x1 broke the school record, I think that was just a really proud moment because our team, we really wanted that. And we had all worked so hard at the individual level, and to come together and do that, we were just so excited about it and just kind of feeling so proud of that time. And it's still there. And we kind of had a feeling it would still be there for a while. And just doing it with, to the point that we were making before, doing it with that community, that close friendship that I had made through track and field. And I'm still friends with those ladies now. So that was a really great moment. For college, that's tough. I have so many college moments that I love, memories that I'm super fond of. But naturally I want to say the collegiate record, because that was a life-changing moment for me. And that was NCAA championships, and that was my junior year. And my senior year, I went to NCAA championships, my sophomore year, I went to NCAA championships, and I just completely choked, and I got last place in the final and ran such an awful time. And I was so nervous about going back. And it was at the same exact location too. It was at Texas A&M. And I was just so nervous, and I was there by myself because none of my teammates had qualified for the meet. And then, my coach told me that I was going back for redemption, and we had worked so hard those last few weeks of training and putting in so much time at the track. And so to go and then, believe in myself and come in first and also have a record was so amazing. But that's only one of the moments that I was really proud of. And at the pro level, the pro level, I think it's hard. Definitely one of my races from this season. I think it was probably a few weeks ago at Texas Relays. I ran my fastest 200 that I've ever run. It was a personal PB. And for me, it was just a testament to, I moved down here. I uprooted my life to move to Austin, Texas, to give myself the best chance to make the Olympic team this summer, and to see that, you know, all of that is coming into fruition, and I'm making everything connect and working so well with my coach. It's very encouraging. And it's such a change, you know, it's just such a drastic change in my life and what I'm used to. So that to know that it's all coming together and that I'm doing well, and it's a great momentum moving forward going into this Olympic year. I'm really proud of that, and I'm excited to keep that going.
All right, I think we have like time for maybe 2 more questions, and then we're going to let everybody go. I know Gabby's getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm going to guess that Sydney's getting up to run tomorrow, and he also has a small person who I think probably gets him up fairly early. So,
Mrs. McCullough, yes, it was between that one and the collegiate record. The sub 50 anchoring was a great moment. Just especially, so Harvard, that was at our Ivy League conference championships when I was a junior in college. And we lost the meet, like even before the 4x4, like Harvard lost to, I don't know what team we lost to. I cannot remember, but the points weren't adding up. And so none of us wanted to run that 4x4. We were all like, let's just go home. We lost. No one wants to be in unnecessary pain. And, you know, coach made us run it anyway. He said, let's go out with a bang. Let's win this relay. And then we can leave, get on that bus, hold our heads high. So we run it, and, you know, the morale was low. You know, my teammates just didn't have the morale. And so they kind of dropped the ball on that relay. But I was like, we can't lose. we cannot get on this bus and lose. And that's just one thing about me in track and field, is I'm just very competitive. So I don't like to lose. So, you know, we were pretty far behind Columbia. And so when I got the baton, I was pretty pissed off. So I just did whatever it took to catch the girl in blue, who's actually a really good friend of mine still. But I didn't expect it to be a 49.
Wow.
But I just had to cross the line first, but it ended up being 49. And it was, I actually didn't think about that, Coach. It was my last college race before I turned pro. So that was.
I love that. You're giving me all the feels. I just want to run fast again. Like, oh, that's great.
Start training again, those interval workouts.
Oh yeah, right. We ran at Penn Relays. When I was at Williston, we ran at Penn Relays, and that was phenomenal. I just remember we ran Penn Relays my last year, 2005. Yeah, we went out there. We were fast that year, but the Jamaicans killed us.
Unfair. We never did that. Cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was the anchor. Definitely not a sub 50. I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
That is
that's wild. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great race.
All right. So I think, unless there are any late breaking, burning questions for people who are now planning to put their sneakers on tomorrow and go out and your door and just start to run. I know I certainly feel inspired, and if I do that and start hurting, I'll be calling the both of you to complain. But I like, Sidney, you know, that obviously it's in the chat. There is a podcast. So I'm going to hope it's like, or an app rather, that I'm going to hope is like sort of having Sidney's inspirational voice in your ear.
Yeah, so it'll be that. It'll be essentially, it's launching in a couple of weeks here, probably another month. It's adaptive training. And so you go on there, it's $5 a month. You pick me as a coach, and you put your workout in, and I'll tell you how you're doing. Depending on how fast you went, how your body's feeling. And so it's actually pretty cool. It's pretty innovative. We just launched with, I just don't know how I even got picked for this, but we have like Matt Fitzgerald, Kara Gulcher, Amanda Brooks, and Greg McMillan, who have all written books on running and training, and then it's me. And so I'm really excited about it. I think it's gonna be very accessible too. $5 a month to get personalized training. It's pretty cool. So check that out for sure.
All right. Well, we are so grateful to the both of you for taking time tonight to be with us and to share such inspiring stories, both about what got you out the door and what you're both giving back to other people. And we're super proud that Williston can claim you